What is life? Why am I here? How is it all connected, and how am I going to navigate this beautiful but crazy journey? I'm Sylvia and welcome to the Soul Sunshine podcast. Today I'm talking to Mel Clare. Mel is a massage therapist who is passionate about birth, women's health and well-being. Mel's treatment can assist with a wide range of concerns such as emotional well-being and health, maintenance, muscular restrictions and injuries, fertility and pregnancy, digestion, trauma and grief. Her treatments resolve imbalances and disease within the physical body and bring balance and harmony to the emotional body. A mother of two beautiful girls who has worked in the field for over 17 years between London and Sydney, she is deeply passionate about supporting women on their journey to healing. Welcome to the Soul Sunshine podcast, Mel. It's so great to have you here today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. Lovely to be here with you.
Mel, before we're heading into our conversation today, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So today we are talking about Mel's beautiful work. We're talking about her journey and why she is so passionate about women's health particularly. We explore how she uses energy work to sense what's going on in women's bodies, the support that she offers and the treatment she uses. We also talk about the differences between the feminine and the masculine and what a world with more feminine energy would look like. We'll also explore how her mission to supporting healing is driving her and how she is supporting women to come back into a state of being their divine selves. Quite a few things on our agenda today, aren't there?
Perfect.
In our conversation today, we'll also be talking about pregnancy loss and termination. So if that is something that is triggering to you and this is not the right time for you to listen, then maybe this is not the episode for you. But I just wanted to let you know that before we jump into the episode today. So Mel, just before we head into the conversation, I just wanted to quickly reflect on how we met. And we are neighbors, and we met during COVID, I think a couple of years ago.
Probably.
Yeah, when you moved onto the street, and like I said, you've got two beautiful girls and your kids were playing on the street, my kids were playing on the street, and with COVID and the restrictions that were happening, and I think more people hanging out in their backyards and front yards, so to speak, we've connected, and it's just been a beautiful friendship that has blossomed over the years. And our kids, they love each other, and
we've got such a beautiful street. We, whether it's me walking the dog or out with the kids skateboarding or you with your boys on the bikes, we're always running into each other, and it's super friendly. All the mums are sort of in and out and handing food out, especially during COVID. It was just beautiful. Yeah, we're very lucky, lucky.
I really love it. And in the afternoon, sometimes I'm like, now when we're going, like, what should we do? And I'm like, let's just go out on the street.
There's always somebody there. There's connection. We have a conversation and
exactly.
Debrief on our day or our week. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and you can talk to people about the happy things, about the challenging things. I find that really nice. Like when we run into each other and we exchange, like we've also got very similar interests, so we exchange things that we're doing, and it's beautiful. Yeah. So we're very lucky there, I think, living in a city, having that community, because community is really important, isn't it? I think COVID has really shown that to us again. I think It's been lost. I mean, it comes and it goes throughout the years, but in the cities it's kind of being lost sometimes, and COVID has really kind of brought that back together a little bit.
Yeah, and especially, when we have small children, that connection is sometimes our saving grace. It's beautiful. It's how it should be, really, I suppose, but not so much in the city, but we are quite blessed, and our kids all get along and love each other.
They're all a little bit crazy and doing crazy things, but
as they should be,
I
right?
know, but so fun, aren't they?
Yeah,
like climbing trees, skateboarding, etc. Like it's just such a joy. And I mean, for us, we don't have a lot of family in Sydney, so for us it's really nice for the boys they're almost like cousins, right?
Absolutely.
They're like, oh, is Cora there, is Thomas there? They just want to play with all the kids, and the joy and the happiness that comes from
childhood, the magic. Running around, jumping
fences,
playing tip and all. Your boys are probably still a bit small for the jumping the fences, but...
No, they're not. Max is on everything. When I'm looking for him, I can't find him. I usually have to look up somewhere because he's climbing everything.
Yeah,
but
gorgeous.
Awesome. No, that is beautiful. Very lucky we are there. So Mel, let's jump into our conversation. Tell me a little bit about your background. What is your story and where did your passion for bodywork and in particular women's health, I guess, start?
Yeah. So I guess it just evolved. I didn't step into this kind of work when I left school. I pursued a corporate path and I'm not really sure why, just what I thought I was going to do. And
because most people do it, maybe.
Exactly. So ended up finding myself in sort of events coordination, salesy type PA roles, that sort of thing. And then didn't really find fulfillment. Stepped sideways, I suppose, and studied graphic design and worked in that world for 4 or 5 years. And that was fantastic and exciting. But yeah, just always seeking something else. So I think that hunger and drive in me took me traveling around the world. Well, I didn't travel around the world. I went across to climb some mountains in Nepal and went to India on my way to, the working holiday visa in London.
Beautiful.
And I think being in London really I lost a bit of myself, a bit of a chameleon, merged into, again, office management, corporate type stuff. And then returning home, I was studying yoga out there as well, so there was a bit of spiritual seeking, but I always had this calling for something more, something deeper for me. Yeah, so I came back to Australia and studied remedial massage, and it was a decision at the time whether it was going to be naturopathy or something in wellness, and all of those things would have been wonderful, but I think I started out with massage because it was more attainable in terms of the commitment. So that journey began, and then I went back to the UK for another 5 years and started out the journey with massage and worked in a clinic which led me to pregnancy massage and a wonderful teacher over there, which was a year journey, and just exploring the depths of that and the energy of the pregnant woman and the body, special concerns and conditions that we need to be aware of, how to position a pregnant body. And then again, returning to Australia after the birth of my first child, I really stepped deeply into pregnancy work. It became, I guess, my focus because I had worked through my own conception journey and just became much more aware of pregnancy and birth. I had my first daughter at home in London, which was super special, long and of course hard, but super special. And I had a doula, which really helped get us over the line. And I think at that point in time, my mother said to me, you'd make a really good doula. She introduced me to the concept of a doula back then, like 16 years ago. Because
it wouldn't have been that mainstream yet, right?
I mean,
it still isn't, but it's getting there a little bit more.
Yeah, and I was in London without any friends or family of my own, essentially. I had support. I had my ex-husband's family and they were wonderful, but they weren't close by. And so stepping into that mothering journey, I was relatively isolated, and longed to come home, I suppose. But a doula was really supportive for us and, convinced us to birth at home, which was ultimately a beautiful decision, and really grateful that everything unfolded, well.
Mm-hmm.
Coming back to Australia, I had my second daughter here. And then I stepped into this beautiful mother circle, which one of the girls in there started a community Facebook program and used to promote my massage services amongst the pregnancy and, new mothers. And after the birth of my second daughter, I started work again and really stepped much more into the pregnancy niche in the eastern suburbs area of Sydney, and that just grew, I suppose, word of mouth over the years. My passion for pregnancy and supporting the mother just kind of grew and expanded and deepened, and then I went on to do the Arvigo Mayan abdominal therapy, which was working with the energy of the womb and healing and the menstrual cycle and digestion and trauma and the patterns that we hold in our body. So working with the pelvis on a much deeper level. And so from that space, I then did like fertility massage and studied holistic pelvic care, a bit of kahuna massage, and then ultimately wanted to experience actual birth support work. So alongside my Bodywork, I studied to become a birth doula and then a childbirth educator. So that's something I sort of do on the side.
Amazing, yeah.
But my body work is definitely what takes up most of my time. Yeah.
So it sounds like when you were in London, you were kind of exploring that pregnancy massage and, getting into that space a little more with people that were having babies, and you were having your own daughter over there. But it sounds like you were doing that before you had your own daughter already. So how did becoming a mother really change the way you work, but also open your eyes up to all those different modalities that are out there, Because it sounds like through the journey that you've been on, you really found where you were supposed to land.
It takes you down different pathways. It becomes narrower, yet broader in a way. I think I reflect on it now, and I am more conscious of how profound that impact was. But at the time, I probably wasn't aware of it. But
it was probably just normal, right? Like you said, it's just the normal progression of things.
You're led onto one thing and then the next. But I now reflect on, stepping into mothering, my understanding now of this space, our pelvic bowl and that creative space, that, a woman, when you bring life into this through the pelvis, you change, You step into mother, you become connected to, we are all connected, but you become connected on another level to this whole kind of, this great mother energy. It somehow, it levels us all. It doesn't matter who you are, what you know. We are all new, we are all vulnerable. There's just so much to learn, and the depths, the capacity that you have to find within yourself. I think we just start to listen to our intuition more. It really forces you to. So listening to your intuition and having much greater awareness around what is good for us or what we're drawn to and why. Yeah, I noticed that in my clients when they come in and go through pregnancy journeys, and then there's that contemplation of, do I return to my corporate role or my this or my that? And there's just such a deep transformative shift of like, what am I doing on this earth and what is my purpose?
100%. Yeah. No, I wanted to say the same. I think you see that so much with women. They have their first child, and a lot of them being in Australia, thinking while they're pregnant, they're going like, oh, I'm going back to work when the baby's 4 months old. And then most of them have the baby and they're like,
wow.
Nah. Definitely not going back in 4 months. But it's like this whole, you just change, right? Even going through something like birth, it's probably one of the biggest transformations that we as women can go through.
Yeah.
And then, having this little human that you're responsible for and that you have to keep safe and alive, and your whole life is really focused around doing everything you can so that that little being is being well looked after. It does change things, right? It makes you question the things that you've done so far, and it makes you question if that is even still relevant.
Where you're focusing your energies, what you're giving to things in your life, that, what your priorities are and your values.
And I think also how you want to show up for your children, right?
Absolutely.
It's like, are they going to look up to you and be like, Mom, why are you doing this? Or are they going to be like, you want it to be purposeful, you want it to be meaningful. I'm not saying everybody, but I had the same experience. For me, it's like, you want them to look at you and be like, oh, my mom's making a change, or my mom's doing something that she really loves and that she's passionate about. You don't just want to do some mindless work and kind of just for the sake of doing it. I think that's what motherhood really shifts.
Yeah. And, practically sometimes you do stay in that same role or career path.
I stayed in the same role.
But there's shifts. There's shifts in how we perceive that. Your perspective shifts, the way you accept your your work or your purpose, or you find other ways, through creativity or through just expansion and becoming more for your children. It's not all necessarily about career change, but there's so many shifts that happen in that time that help us discern what we want to be with the space that we have, with the time that we have.
100%, yeah. And it's like you said, it's not so much about the shift, but sometimes it's like it might need something additional, because you might still need to do your job or even want to do your job, but you might be looking at something additional. I know a lot of women who start little projects on the side.
The amount of entrepreneurs, the amount of products or women that might be laying on the table and they're like, why haven't they invented one of these? Or this would be really helpful at this stage. And then you see this idea kind of become,
I mean, this podcast really was the same, actually. This
podcast creative
was
passion
created out of like my maternity leave and me wanting just to do something else, something more, something that I'm really passionate about.
The creative space, the pelvic bowl, And that goes on to like the conversation we were having about mothering versus not mothering. And, if you're not actually birthing a child, you can use that creative life force
100%
to create something magical, something for you, something that gives you purpose.
Yeah.
Or mothering others, or it's
I mean, mothering is such a big term, right? It doesn't necessarily always have to be mothering your own children.
Absolutely.
And yes, a woman changes obviously if she gives birth and if she becomes a mother, but there's a lot of other ways as well how people can express that feeling and how people can be mothering and caring for other people or community or whatever it may be. And like you said, birthing like creative projects into the world. I mean, there are a lot of women, I actually know women who go like, actually, Avis talked about that in her podcast. She talked about it beautifully. She was like, I realized I don't actually have the energy to have a child in this life. It's not what's meant to be for me in this life. But I mean, she is such a power woman and is like creating so many beautiful healing spaces for other women and for other people to go through, So there is so many different ways of being able to use that creative energy that comes from being a woman, right?
Yeah. And that's something that's interesting when you do have children. I have found myself over the time looking at people that are doing incredible things, that aren't focusing on children and have all this beautiful time and energy to do things that I aspire to do, and I just have to put it down and I can't right now. This is my focus. This is my path, and
That's so funny that you say that, because I sometimes think about that as well. I'm like, when I had like meetings with my team and none of the girls in my team had children and they were talking about all the things that they were doing on the weekend. And, for me, that was like, oh my God, I can't do those things. But it is like, I mean, and sometimes you do have that yearning, Sometimes you go like, oh, I would love to have that space for myself. But then, you're in that phase. And I mean, like, that phase of being children, especially being so little as well. I mean, it goes so quick. Yes. So everybody deals with it differently. For me, it's like I really want to enjoy it. And I'm doing as much as I not can do, but want to do on the side. But there are, like you said, there are limitations, and what has priority at a certain point in your time.
Yeah, we just embrace what we choose and what's for us and find the expansion within that, I suppose.
So when we're talking about women and how we change, and no matter if you're a mother or not, if you choose to have children or not, but generally speaking, women are obviously very cyclic beings. We go with that cycle of our menstruation, and that's how we show up in the world. And I would love you to expand a little bit on the fact that women are cyclic beings and what that actually means for us in a day-to-day life and how we show up in life.
Yeah, so there's lots of beautiful work now around, the menstrual seasons and the seasons of our life as women, the spring, summer, autumn, winter phase of the world, how it reflects in our cycle, it reflects in our whole journey of life. But essentially, starting with our day one, our bleed is our winter. We are deeply introspective and we retreat into the cave. We're at our most intuitive, so it's a really beautiful time for stillness and listening and conserving our energy levels. If we push too hard while we're during our period, our bleed, it will then have consequences in the entire cycle. depletion and maybe a heavier bleed the following month. Yeah, so we really need to listen to our limits. So after our bleed finishes, we're stepping into spring, and our energy levels start to pick up. And then summer is our ovulation. We're at our peak, our clarity of thinking, our peak of energy levels. So this is when we should use our energy for creative purposes, or for our public speaking or presentations, or whatever it is that we're doing. And then once we've ovulated, we sort of start going into our autumn phase, and again, starting to kind of come into that retreat phase, conserving our energy for winter. And, so that's our little menstrual cycle, but it also relates to the seasons of our life. Spring is kind of, our youth, and then moving into our maiden years, moving into our mothering years, and then, moving into, well, there's a new phase. I think Jane Hardwicke Collins brought the margarin, which is, a beautiful phase between becoming an old woman and, that sort of perimenopause, beautiful stage of life where you're really sitting inside self and intuition and purpose. And, hopefully children have left the nest and it's all about you. Yeah, so, and then becoming an older woman is that real kind of retreat, winter almost. And so there's these phases of the life that reflect the seasons.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever thought about that's actually the same, that the way that we cycle through it each month is the same way we cycle through
our energy levels through life.
Yeah,
generally speaking. And what is interesting, there's so many things that push us to live outside of that and not in alignment with that. So whether it be careers, whether it be like the menstrual pill, these things take away our experience of the cycle, our ability to create, release, So it takes us away from that.
Yeah, well, there's two things that came up for me when you were talking, and I want to go a little bit deep in what you just said. But before, the other thing that you said that I found really fascinating that I actually haven't heard before is that if you push too hard in your winter, while you're bleeding, it actually affects your whole cycle.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really interesting. I've never heard that before, that you don't just push yourself too much during that particular time. It actually affects, your whole next cycle, your whole next month of how you can show up in the world.
Which we are conditioned to do that.
That's just what I want to say, which literally leads into what you were just saying, that society, like there is this thing that, like back in the day when women were bleeding, there wasn't any menstrual products or anything. They were literally sitting in a hut or in their house or, surrounded by their moms and aunties and being taken care of, right? And just having that retreat time. And then obviously with menstrual products coming in onto the market, it's really great and empowering for women, but at the same time it has taken away something really natural and important to us, which is that we don't work the same every day, and we are cyclic beings, and we are supposed to have, like you just explained so beautifully, ups and downs within our month.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're looking at right now in our society, because women have their work going on and they have their families going on and they have so many things that they need to take care of, that there is no time and space to be able to completely retreat, or we might not even give that time or place to ourselves because we don't even know it, because it hasn't really been taught to us, because we grew up in that era where, we had menstrual products. So it was just like, okay, you've got this and off you go. You can do whatever you need to do, and you can do sport, that's cool, and you can go and do exercise, and you can go and do this. Like I wasn't brought up necessarily, I'm not saying everybody, but like I personally wasn't brought up, my mom going like, oh, you're in your period, you should take it easy for the next couple of days, because she didn't know that either, she was in the same boat than most of us are, that you just kind of keep going because you have to, the wheels have to keep turning.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because there's certain organizations now, and I'm not sure if you're aware of, that are actually bringing in, I think they call it like bleeding leave or something like that. I can't remember the exact term, but there are organizations now that actually realize that women are just different from that point of view, and that they need that extra time. And I think that is a beauty. It's obviously very slow, it's a slow burner, but it's coming back, and I think it's really important because it's also for men. We are not even aware of it ourselves a lot of the time. So how do we then ask our husbands and partners to be aware of that and, be able to hold space for us in return, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
if we don't even give ourselves the permission to do it.
Yeah, it's slowly re-education, I suppose. And but it runs so deeply because we are just conditioned to just push on. And when you look at the cycle of bleeding, it's, our body is releasing, our body is cleansing the lining. It's an energetic cleansing of us and releasing as well, and giving back to earth. And so it's important, very important.
So important.
Essential. Yeah.
And I think we need to teach the next generation as well, I'm sure you do it with your girls, but even I'm saying to my boys now, they're only 6 and 4, but I tell them when I'm on my period, I'm like, Mummy is bleeding, I'm not feeling that well today, I need some rest, I need some space, I feel like the younger you can expose them to that idea, the more normal it becomes to them. And then when they grow up and they have partners, they will have that understanding of a woman needing more space or more rest. And it might feel funny now, but it's like anything, the earlier you can expose them to it, the more normal it becomes when they are older.
And it's honouring it and using really positive language around it. And that's unfortunately not done. In society, there's, I would say, this wasn't my personal experience, but most women that I talk to and most girls have negative connotations with the menstrual cycle, with pain and with, it's an inconvenience. And, that's really sad. And so I think that we need to start with our little ones. And I do teach a menstrual health workshop for women and girls and their female carers because it needs to start young. You need to remind girls or teach girls of the magic. Our menstrual cycle is connected to the moon. We are connected to Earth. We're magical.
And it's the reason why you can have babies, right?
Yeah, we bring life in. Yeah. And without it, and with that disconnect, that's where we end up with all sorts of problems, with fertility and more than that, our mental health, I guess, when there's no acknowledgement of our connection to Earth. And
it's really interesting that you say that, because Bryony, who I've had on the podcast as well, she was diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she luckily survived it, and she's thriving now and everything's well. But she talks about this really beautifully as well, that we grow up thinking, it's my period and it's so annoying and this and that, and then she, at that point when she had the cancer, she had to go through IVF and make sure she gets some eggs in case she can't have kids afterwards. And then she at some point got her period again, and she was like, I was so happy that I got my period. And it's like, you grow up and you don't really realize what a blessing it is that you bleed every month, and that you have that, because that is, like you said, the ability to bring life into this world, if you choose to do that at some point. But it's, like you said, it's like a complete rethinking and re-education of how we're talking to women as well as men from a very young age. And because I remember hiding tampons, it's like, you don't want people to see your tampons or anything, work colleagues or something. It's like, well, why not? It's like something natural, and you do need to use them, so it's like, it's just a really weird thing that society, I guess, has stigmatized. It's like, you bleed, but you don't talk about it.
Yeah, and that's changing. It's definitely changing in parts.
Yes.
And, my experience was the opposite. I was excited to bleed. And my girls, nice. I think I've given them the same,
I remember you telling me that you bought roses for Saba.
Yeah. I think,
I remember that was so beautiful.
Celebrate it. And that's one of the things we teach in the workshop is to, consider making it a celebration. Whether it's a special gift, I gave her a moonstone ring, which I had put away, for a couple of years before. And some flowers and her favourite chocolate, and we went for a lovely dinner on the beach together. That with poke bowls on the beach, and it was super lovely. But make it sacred. It is sacred, and remind. That
makes
girls.
Me tear up. That makes me really emotional, because I think that's so beautiful. Because I don't think that a lot of people have that experience. And this is the beginning. This is the foundation of our entire womanhood, right?
And perspective of our bodies, and the connection with our womb, and then we go on to. There's so much unexplained infertility, there's blockages with that energetic flow in our body or our connection to our womb, and this all stems from our belief systems around our menstrual cycle and our purpose as women and girls. And if we don't have the concept of this sacred process, then there's a real disconnect. So it's such an important part of the process, the whole process, and our whole life as a woman.
Yeah. So when we're looking at that feminine side in society, it is changing, and it is coming back in. And I think our generation now is starting to teach the next generation, the importance of those events and not stigmatizing it. But generally speaking, I guess our society is still very dominantly masculine driven, like there's a lot of things in it that are very masculine. And so I did a beautiful healing session with you a couple of weeks ago as well, and you said to me afterwards that you felt that I need to bring out my feminine a little bit more because there was a lot of masculine energy there as well. And that goes back to what we've said as well with, kind of constantly needing to perform and constantly needing to keep things together and not being able to allow yourself, the space and the time to just be, and, because you have to make things happen. But when I'm looking at that from more on a macro level, and when I'm zooming out on that, and again, I don't know, but I'm making an assumption here that a lot of women probably are running on that energy these days, so sometimes at least in that masculine energy because they have to get things done. So when we're looking at the world, what would more feminine energy, if we would all bring more feminine energy into the world, and that's not just women, I think, women as well as men, men can also carry beautiful feminine energy. What would our world look like if we would bring more of that feminine energy into it?
Yeah, big. I think that is happening. There is masculine and feminine flow, which is a constant in everything, every being, every person, male, female. It's in the universe, the earth, and it ebbs and flows like ocean, And so, I think we have been in a long period of time where masculine energy has been fairly dominant, but I think that it is shifting. I mean, there's lots of conversations around that happening, and I think reflecting on the whole COVID period, that was the universe was essentially, or the greater power, Mother Earth, Great Mother, God, whatever you want to call it, was forcing us to sit in a bit of stillness, almost like our winter, retreat. And contemplate. And that is very feminine, that shift. It
was almost like a forced way of slowing people down and just letting them be rather than do, right?
Yeah, and then there was a split. For some, there's a conscious choice to make that a way of living, and then for others it was forgotten quite quickly and just, let's just carry on and get back into the nitty-gritty and the grind. And, essentially the earth is feminine, great mother, and the energy within ebbs and flows, like I said, and I see that it exists in everything. So masculine energy can be in men and women. That masculine energy, the doing and the pragmatic and the scheduling and the, it's a different energy, and we need to bring it to survive. And so when the feminine is the listening, the softness, the nurturing, the holding, the sort of holding space, I suppose. And we need a balance of both. We need, I guess that's the key word, balance. So when we're talking masculine energy, society sort of has conditioned us to function in that way. Just the nature of getting up and working essentially 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, everything's scheduled. We're not really able to listen to our intuition and change it up if we feel different on a different day. So we're forced into the doing. I think that's changed as well a little bit, with people are able to work from home globally, essentially. It's that's a little bit more feminine. And then, on the individual level, whenever there has been trauma or illness or hardship, or we sometimes step into masculine to survive, and that's the body's way of, the body or the nervous system's way of keeping us safe.
Is it like controlling things, being able to? Does it come with that, like the scheduling, the controlling, the doing, I know exactly what's coming.
And that's essential for survival. But then when we're ready, we need to then slow down and start listening to that more feminine, because we need a balance. We need both. We need both to exist. So, yeah, what would a world look like? I think balanced.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think it's a slow process, but it's definitely shifting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it would be beautiful, idealistic, you know. And I think we have a choice. We need to decide on an individual level where we're going to spend our time and energy, and be conscious of that, because it affects the global energy. You know.
And we might also, like you said, first of all, both of it is always there, but we might also go through phases, right? Where we're like, yeah, right now I just need more masculine energy because I need to get this project done, or whatever it may be. And then, you know, you have that space and time where you go like, okay, now I can soften more into my feminine energy and actually, you know, be and nurture and hold space for myself. So I think there's always that balance of individuals going through that wave as well, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
One of them being more dominant than the other.
And it's just the awareness, because I guess, you know, we're both aware of it, but some people that are really in that masculine energy, because they're so outside of themselves, I guess I call it, you know, you're in the doing, and I sort of say outside of myself, because, you know, the self is the deep center, you know, and when we're always in the doing, that feels very masculine. So we're outside of that deep self, and there's an emptiness in that space when you're outside of yourself. So I think you always need to come back, you know, but not everyone knows how. And I guess that leads on to bodywork. I mean, any kind of therapy, talk therapy, whatever it is, being with nature even. But that's where I use bodywork to help people bring back that self presence.
So tell me about that a little bit more. Tell me about the modalities that you use and the approach to work that you have when you're, you know, trying to support people and exactly bringing that back together.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with pregnancy massage, because it's what I've sort of started with. I work with a pregnant woman at all stages of her pregnancy, and we address what's going on for her. So starting with physical, you know, there might be physical conditions that change, you know, the body changes massively during pregnancy, and having awareness around those key kind of areas. So we're just focusing on the changes in pregnancy and how to support the pregnant body. And then I work postpartum, and the postpartum is a combination of relieving the physical, you know, tension from holding a new child and breastfeeding and sleep deprivation and all of those things. But a big part of the postpartum is the emotional, energetic support, because it's such a transition, such a shift, and most women are quite overwhelmed in that stage. You know, it's such a big shift. So a lot of the postpartum work is holding that, even though we're doing body work. There's a lot of conversation or working with the energy there to support and replenish a woman after that.
So tell me a little bit more about that, like in terms of the energy work. How do you approach that? How does that work? And how are you able to really read that energy and, you know, support people through that on an energetic level as well, and spiritual level?
Yeah. And more broadly speaking, not just pregnancy, but just generally for all of my work. So I have people that come for all kinds of reasons, like with the Mayan abdominal work and the holistic pelvic care, and then even just called for a massage. But, you know, I guess someone's drawn to me because it's more than just that physical massage. So, you know, there might be some calling there that they don't really recognise, but when they're there, they understand. And you know, reading somebody, understanding, feeling comes from, I guess, all different levels. So you are listening, feeling and hearing a person's story, the conditions that might arise in the body that are physical repercussions of an energetic kind of like displacement or trauma or holding or belief systems. So I guess working for so long with bodies, you develop a heightened sense of awareness around, you know, when someone walks in the room, you feel their energy, you see the way they're holding. When I'm working on their body, there might be physical restrictions and armoring and protection, you know, in the way that the body moves. And then there's another level, I suppose, that more intuitive kind of clairvoyant listening. And that's something that I think develops when you are very present and still with bodies for a long, long time. And for me, I guess I was always interested in that area, but it definitely becomes more finely tuned the more time you spend. And I'm pretty lucky because I spend, most of my days in that connected, silent place, and it just becomes finely tuned, I suppose. So sometimes I see things, sometimes I hear things, sometimes I feel things in my body, emotions, or I might see a story or a pattern unfolding that might relate to them, whether it be their childhood or their past life or something that's maybe intergenerational potentially, or just belief systems that they're carrying in their body, and you can feel it in their nervous system. The body holds our story, the body holds our beliefs, and we condition ourselves, or we are conditioned.
And there's this beautiful book, I'm just looking at my bookshelf over there, it's called The Body Keeps Score.
I love, yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, exactly, the body does not lie. Yeah. And you can do all the mindset work that you like, which is beneficial, but the body holds. And it's just another piece of the puzzle. So when someone's on a healing journey, they might have a great healer or a psychologist, and that's fantastic. We need to work on all levels. So a real team is actually quite important.
Yeah. For different elements, right, in the journey.
Yeah. So the bodywork can help unlock that physical holding. And so we hold it in our fascia, we hold it in our wombs. Our nervous system becomes heightened, when there's experience of trauma or developmental trauma or conditioning. So my work is a combination of easing the physical concerns, but at the same time connecting to my own sense of spirit, I suppose, and prayer and intention, and unblocking blockages within the woman's body. But I'm actually bringing her awareness to it, I suppose. I'm not healing her, I'm holding a space to create that unraveling, I suppose, and unblocking areas of restriction. Yeah. And, going back to that concept of self, it's super simple. Working with the nervous system, the concept is simple, it's just the getting there that for some people with deep conditioning that's hard. And it's such, it's been a journey of my own to find my own centre and my own deep sense of self and presence, and understanding that how we are connected to all that is, Great Mother. So when I work, I'm helping calm the nervous system with love and light and intention, so that client, that person can experience themselves on the deepest level. And that remembering, if you feel that sense of self and that state of bliss, if we can keep coming back to that place as much as possible, because conditioning means we're going to walk out of the room and whatever, something's going to pull at our energy and we're going to be outside of ourselves again. But the more time we spend in that place, the more we retrain, rewire our nervous system to feel safe. So that's a really big part of what I do, I think. It's just helping people reconnect with that deep sense of self, and that bliss within that space. And that's the letting go of all of the doing. It's letting go of the fear. It's letting go of the story that we've conditioned ourselves to believe about ourselves. And I've done that through my own work, and I understand that process and can relate. And that applies to so many different kinds of holding in the body, whether it be trauma, whether it be loss, whether it be grief. There's also that beautiful acknowledgement of purpose, of these things that come into our life. And, it's a delicate kind of balance, because when you experience hardship, grief or loss, it's hard to say to somebody that, oh, you asked for this, this is happened for a reason. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Worst thing you can say to someone that's in that moment of grief. You don't want to say that. But with time, we might not ever understand, but often there comes a time when we understand why something came to us.
Yeah.
Where we had to expand within ourselves to, our capacity to deal with that. And some of the most beautiful work I have had is the most sensitive and hard, the loss work. But I am in awe of the capacity of women and the ability to overcome and the ability to, expand, and their hearts just get bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so essentially for me, all healing comes back to the heart, and the self, and that beautiful place within us all.
How do you think people find that capacity when you're talking about, grief and loss and, the really hard things in life that happen? And some of the things that you've worked with are now unimaginable, for so many of us. But how do you think women and, men as well, where do they get the strength from? Like, how do they find the strength to get through some, really unimaginable things?
Yeah, I think, there's two levels. The recognizing the value in the pragmatic, the putting one foot in front of the other. And that's the masculine, and that's survival, and that's really important. That's important to carry us through that unraveling and finding the deeper sense of understanding within whatever the grief is. And from my perspective, finding the strength comes from finding that place that's deep inside of us, that's, connection to source, connection to spirit. For me, that is an abundant resource.
Where you realize that you're part of something bigger.
Yeah. And grief is, when something is taken away from us, or we're experiencing grief because we are not ever going to have that experience that we visualized unfolding. So there's some sort of expectation, I suppose, of an outcome, and, that's, gosh, it's so hard when we're talking about, life and children, and it's deeply painful if things don't unfold as we want them to. But we have to, I think the most beautiful thing we can do is to accept and to use our heart to find the love and compassion for ourselves. But, there's a real difference between sitting too long in anger and resentment. Of course, they're a natural part of the process, and you can't keep your emotions in, you need to move through them. But I think the most easeful way to ultimately move through them is through that deep sense of self and the letting go, which is so hard, hard. And I know you meditate, I meditate as well, and for us, that's one vehicle, a very incredibly important and beautiful vehicle to help us move through life and let go and just find that deeper sense of self and connection, because that's quite blissful, that place. And when we let go of the expectation of what we thought life might look like.
But it's challenging, right? It is really challenging.
So challenging.
It doesn't matter what you're dealing with, and different people deal with different things, but it is, like you said, that grief and that loss around things not turning out the way that you thought they might turn out. Maybe at some point realizing that it was for the better, and it was actually a good thing that it didn't turn out that way. But then in other cases, potentially never really understanding why things turned or didn't turn out the way that they turned out.
Because it doesn't always mean it feels better.
No, it doesn't. Not at all.
If things turn out the way they're meant to, it doesn't mean that's a good outcome for us to feel great. It can be gritty and painful, and it often is. And it actually has to be along the way at some point.
And it's just that human experience, right, that we are all going through, of like the ups and the downs and the waves of life that are coming in, It's like that saying where they say, nothing's permanent. Not the highs, but also not the lows, and how we have to go through different experiences in order to grow and to learn and to, whatever we've come to this world for, and you look at some people and you go like, they've had it really tough, and you don't know what their soul journey or their soul contract
That's right.
is there for. But it's even painful to watch sometimes, right? Like personally, I'm a very empathetic person, and I get sometimes really caught up in other people's stories even, because I feel the pain for them, and then I'm like, I have to remove myself from it, because it's not even my story, it's not even my journey, but just that, that compassion, I guess, that you have towards somebody else and what they are going through. So
because we're connected, right?
Exactly.
And community and connection is the ultimate, and when we're connected to other people's hearts, as we should be, we feel them. I guess where you're going is, and where my head's going is, so then supporting a woman or a person who's going through that, there's a real, if we're talking loss, I suppose, a woman that has experienced miscarriage or late-term loss, it's some of the deepest grief.
Yeah.
And there needs to be acknowledgement that that woman has become mother.
Yeah.
Whether or not, they raise a child. So there's this acknowledgement that this magical process is unfolded within her body, and she's changed.
Wow.
And if we can work with helping the flow of energy in her body so that the grief is not trapped, it doesn't create armouring or a pattern. So through body work and nervous system work, through counselling, whatever it is that she needs to support her through that process, it's the energy flow. It's helping maintain or re-establish that energy flow so that that's not held in the body.
And like you said before, there will be more practitioners that will be needed as well to work on different levels, right? Working on the body, working on the mind, working on the spiritual side. Like we said, it's unimaginable loss that some people have to go through. So there needs to be that support network that, can pick them up.
And it's such a gradual process, and it never goes away. There's just a difference in the way it's perceived or the way it's stored in the body.
It never goes away, but you just somehow learn how to live with it and how to still keep living your life.
And to make it sacred as well, or to acknowledge the sacredness of it, not to make it, because it actually is, there's nothing more sacred. And so...
What do you mean by that? There's nothing more sacred?
Understanding why this soul came to us and how it changed us, and understanding what its purpose is in that, and that it may move on, it may stay with us, around us. And that's some of the really special work, when I work on women that have had loss, you can feel them around often, but there's lots of different layers to that. You can feel people around people, like angels essentially. They're holding us, they're helping us. So it's massively complex. It's very traumatic. It can be incredibly beautiful. I've seen just the most incredible capacity within women in this space, and I'm just always in awe, and it's so rich. But then, it's the same as bringing life in, Life and death is the most sacred thing. There's
the portals,
nothing bigger. There's portals. It's the spirit door. We're sitting at the edge holding that space for something to come in or something to go out, and it expands our capacity beyond what we could ever understand, I think.
Well, it makes me really emotional. It's really funny actually, because I do believe in life after death. I do believe in the soul journey and the way that we keep coming back. And I never feared death, or I never was afraid of death. But I think for me, having children has changed the perception of it, because I feel like it's almost like you realize how fragile life is as well, and how much now leans on it,
and how brief it is.
Yes, how brief it is, how quick it goes, and how, like you said before, how close sometimes joy and grief can lie together, Even with, motherhood, it's like joy and worry, like everybody tells you how amazing it's going to be, but nobody's going to tell you how much you're going to worry about your children, or how much pain that's going to bring. But then it's the same with death. I think it's that, birth is joy and, happiness, and then death is that sadness and that loss and that feeling of grief. So I don't know, I just feel like the older I get, not the older I get, but yeah, it's
the more you move through life.
Yeah, it's just, I find it to be the most heartbreaking
because if it's the one thing in life that you want most deeply, and just you see yourself mothering and having child, and if you can't, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So Mel, I would love you to talk me through a little bit more about the, based on what we've just been talking about. I know that you use a lot of the womb healing and the wrapping. So I would love you to talk us through a little bit more about the practices of that and how that works and what that does to, your body, but as well as to your mind.
So this abdominal, sacral and womb work is beautiful, beautiful work. Core of kind of what I do, I think. And so again, women come for all kinds of reasons. I do have some men that come, and it's really beautiful when you get, men come that acknowledge the physical kind of repercussions of stress and anxiety or trauma and how that's affected their digestion or even the energy within.
Yeah.
But predominantly, yes, it's women in my clinic, and most come probably with fertility struggles, menstrual cycle concerns, pain, conditions, endometriosis, PCOS, all these kinds of menstrual conditions, and then digestion, bloating, anxiety. So I work predominantly in these sessions on the abdominal sacral area. So we store so much here, particularly the pelvic bowl, the sacrum. So there's a lot of armouring, women are conditioned to hold their stomachs in, there's tension, there's physical tension, there's belief systems, we send messages from our brain to our bellies all the time of negative messages. And as we spoke before, menstrual cycle, this is an obstacle, this is a hindrance, this is, something that's annoying me, negative messages. So we need to bring this beautiful presence and this sacredness back and this connection to this space. So on a physical level, we're working to restore function, bring blood flow, remove adhesions, scar tissue, or help soften that space, the tension, the holding, realign or assist the womb in finding its happy position within the pelvis, helping conception, helping the lining of the womb shed monthly and become clearer and brighter and just function well, I suppose, overall. So that's sort of the physical. We want the whole pelvis to be in balance. We want the pelvis to be aligned. All of these things are really important when we're talking about the optimal function of the pelvic and the abdominal organs. We want the breath to work well. I mean, the diaphragm is critical with the pelvic floor, and also our blood, major blood flow runs through this space. Our stomach, it's energetically, it's our powerhouse, our solar plexus. So when there's fear or anxiety, or there's been any kind of stresses, traumas, this space is massively constricted, which, affects our blood flow, our breath, our entire being.
Yeah.
So we're working on all of this space, and then we're working energetically to re-establish this beautiful flow between the mind, the heart, the womb, and all through all of our chakras, I suppose. There's that balance. With that work, I see incredible improvements in fertility, improvements in menstrual pain, but most important, the deep connection, the beautiful transformation that happens within a woman when she just lands within herself and she honours her body and starts to reclaim that part of her body. And the wrapping, the closing of the bones is traditionally, the beautiful Mexican midwives use it as a postpartum ritual to help complete the cycle of birth and close down that expansive birth field. We are very open and vulnerable by design when we are bringing life in. And, for the 6 weeks or so after birth, we want to stay quiet. We want to stay within. We don't want to do too much and expose ourselves to outside energies. We want to conserve our energy for our baby, and we want to heal. And So this process is done sort of after that immediate postpartum, and it's a ritual of wrapping the body in the Mexican scarves, the rebosos, and it helps consolidate all of those fragmented energies and the expansion and realign and help replenish and nourish a woman for that next chapter. It also is beautiful to use when there's been grief or trauma or anxiety. So I don't just use it for birth, I use it in all of those situations where we need to help realign the energies and help a woman calm that nervous system and drop down inside self. Yeah. And everyone loves it. Everyone loves to be wrapped.
It's amazing. Yeah, you did it on
me.
You did it on me, and I was like, I just felt so cocooned in. And especially when you did the head wrap, there was this slight pressure on it as well. But it felt really nurturing and holding. And I was like, oh, just leave me here. And it was nice and warm and cozy. And I was just like, oh, it just felt so good.
And what I say to women is, it is so beautiful to be wrapped because you are left with yourself.
Yeah.
You are left with yourself, just your deepest self. And in that moment, or I personally, when I'm wrapped, I feel connected. I feel like, I am just one little flower on the earth of all of these, essentially like wombs. We're all connected. Yeah. And when I'm wrapped, I just feel that. I feel that connection. And like I said, I remind women that essence, that connection to self feels so divine because it's you, it's yourself. And it's safe. When you're wrapped like a baby, the outside world is muted and the doing and the thoughts and anything that takes you outside of yourself is muted, and you're just left with self. And that's pure safety, it's pure bliss.
And again, it's like coming back to what we've talked about before, it's something that we don't have space for very often and that we allow ourselves to go to very often, right?
Yeah.
So being in that space and allowing ourselves to go there and just, like you said, just completely being with ourselves is just,
It's like being in nature. You can get that from different things, but that pure sort of sense of stillness and connection.
Meditation, right? That's the thing. I love that.
Definitely.
And I'm like,
definitely.
Yeah. Mel, how important do you think that deep personal and collective healing is in the world we're living in today?
Yeah, I think it's key to the survival of our existence. When we become, I guess, deeply present and connected to self and purpose, we live through our hearts, there's more connection, there's more kindness, things ultimately shift in the right direction, expansion, growth. When we heal ourselves, it changes the way we go out in the world. It changes the way we meet others and the way others see us. And, if we can all do the work as much as possible, gently, not over-efforting, interactions become more easeful and we become more heart-centered, and ultimately, a community and a world that's more heart-centered will be a better place.
Amazing. Mel, thank you so much for this chat today. It was beautiful.
Thank you. So beautiful. So beautiful. We could talk for hours.
I know, that's always the case. It's always really hard to cut a really good conversation, but there's so much in there already for our listeners. And thank you so much for bringing all your knowledge and your wisdom and sharing your beautiful work that you're doing in the community. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure. The 3 main pearls of wisdom that came out of our conversation today. The first one is the conversation that we had around the menstrual cycle, and that we're going through spring, summer, autumn and winter. What I found really interesting and what I have not heard before, like I said before in our conversation as well, is, if you're pushing too much in the winter phase where you're supposed to be resting and nurturing yourself, it can actually affect your whole cycle. And it is something that, doesn't just affect the period you're in your cycle, it affects your whole next cycle. And then that the cycle that you're in on a monthly basis also is related to the cycle of life that you're going through, from being a child being an adolescent,
Yes.
going all the way through to becoming an older woman and, you know, at some point like leaving this world again. So I think that the correlation of how that is connected is really beautiful and stood out for me as one of the things. The second pearl of wisdom was talking about the masculine versus the feminine energy, and the fact that, you know, we all carry both of those energies within ourselves. It's just at different times we go through different levels of them, and if we can all bring a little bit more of that feminine energy into the world, you know, a bit of that nurturing and listening and being energy, the more balanced we will be as individuals, but then also as a society. And the third thing that I wrote down is, you know, when you were talking about the wrapping of the bones and that beautiful tradition that you do, and how it completes the process of birth, you know, because we are opening up, our whole body opens up throughout birth, and then the wrapping of bones is kind of that closing things back down again and really bringing women back into that divine state of their own selves. And that's why it also feels so nice, how you said, because you are actually connected to the higher divine and you're part of that and you're really just sitting in your essence. So I think that is such a beautiful experience, and what you said as well in terms of that can be achieved through, you know, the wrapping of the bones, but coming back to your divine self can also be achieved through being in nature and doing meditation and, you know, doing other things that really kind of fill your soul, and just trying to find those things in your daily life for you to be able to come back to that divine self, because that's who you are, that's who you're supposed to be, and that's, you know, the perfect version of yourself.
Yeah, amazing.
So that's my 3 points for today. And so Mel, in terms of people getting in touch with you, I think they can find you on Instagram, on Body Bright Massage, and on your website,
Yes,
bodybright.com.au. Is it best to just send you an email or?
Yeah, private message or an email. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, do get in touch with Mel if what you've heard today spoke to you. She works out of a beautiful little space in Rose Bay in the eastern suburbs, which is really warm and nurturing and beautiful space. So get in touch with her if, you know, you feel called to working with her, experiencing the true magic that she brings. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. I really hope you got something out of this episode today. We went deep into, you know, feminine healing and women's work, and I really hope that there were some little bits and pieces in there, you know, that can help you on your journey moving forward as well. I really hope this episode brought some sunshine to your soul. I'm sending love and light your way, and until next time.